So, if your boss walks into a room, taps the table, and declares, "We need training," the absolute worst thing you can do is actually start building that training.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds incredibly counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Because in like almost every corporate environment on Earth,
Yeah,
when a leader asks for a course, your immediate reaction is just to say yes.
right. You want to be helpful. It feels like action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You think, let's open up the authoring tools and get to work.
You think the obvious next step is to fire up the learning management system, your company's portal where all those mandatory modules live, and just schedule a workshop, right? Start churning out content.
Which is what everyone does, yeah.
But we are taking a deep dive today into some really brilliant source material from Emerge ID. And their research points to a very different reality.
A completely different reality.
Yeah, jumping straight into building based on that one sentence from your boss is actually a massive trap. It's one of the most common, most exhausting, and honestly most costly mistakes an organization can make.
Which is why we really need to talk about learning architecture today. It's basically the strategic blueprint that happens before any training is ever built.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to show you how this blueprint prevents teams from building these super expensive learning experiences based on mere assumptions.
Because the goal here isn't just to make better courses. I mean, it's to save you time, save your budget, and frankly, save your sanity.
And your weekends.
Yes, your weekends. By figuring out what problem you are actually trying to solve before you start solving it.
Okay, let's unpack this from the very beginning. The source material refers to that initial request, that we need training request, not as a directive, but as a symptom.
A symptom, yes.
Treating a request for training as the final answer is like walking into a doctor's office, coughing once, and demanding they schedule you for open heart surgery without running a single test.
Oh, that's such a great way to look at it.
Right, like you know something is wrong, you've identified a symptom, but you have no idea if the treatment matches the disease.
That is the perfect way to visualize the dynamic. I mean, the cough is real. The discomfort in the business is very real.
Yeah.
But the leap to open heart surgery is entirely unsupported by evidence at that stage. When a leader says we need training, they are noticing a legitimate business concern. They're seeing the cough.
But a cough could be a cold, it could be allergies, or it could be, something much worse.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that these wildly different problems absolutely do not require the same solution.
So what do these corporate coughs actually look like? What are the symptoms people are experiencing on the floor that make them run to the learning and development team?
Well, the text lists out some incredibly common ones. You might have new employees who are wildly inconsistent in how they do their jobs,
Oh, yeah.
or you might have staff who keep asking the exact same questions repeatedly, completely tying up the help desk. Sometimes the symptom is a reliance on tribal knowledge, meaning all the vital info to run a department is locked inside the head of just one veteran employee. And if they retire or get sick, the whole department halts.
Oh, we all know that person, the Bob in accounting, who is literally the only one who knows how the legacy software works.
Exactly. Good old Bob.
Yeah.
Other symptoms include a process changing, but the support materials being hopelessly out of date.
That happens all the time.
Or an LMS that is such a nightmare to navigate that people just give up entirely.
Yeah.
Or, this is perhaps the most insidious symptom, the completion numbers for a learning module look perfectly fine. Like 100% of the staff click through to the end, but actual on-the-job performance hasn't improved at all.
Wow, yeah. Those are radically different problems. I mean, an add LMS interface has nothing to do with Bob in accounting hoarding knowledge.
Nothing at all.
So why is treating them all with a new training course just a guaranteed failure?
Because of the mechanism of what training actually does. I mean, formal training is designed to fix a lack of knowledge or a lack of skill. That's it.
Okay, so it only fixes one very specific thing.
Right. If you treat all those wildly different symptoms with the exact same medicine, which is building a new course, you are completely ignoring the root cause.
I see.
If people are asking the same question repeatedly, they might not need a 30-minute e-learning module. They might just need a really clear, searchable job aid pinned to their physical workspace.
Right, like a cheat sheet.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And if completion numbers are high but performance is low, well, you might need better manager coaching on the floor, not a second course. Learning architecture is how you stop prescribing open heart surgery for a seasonal allergy.
Okay, so if the cough could be 10 different diseases, how do we actually run the tests? I mean, we can't just guess.
No, you definitely can't
What
guess.
does this architecture actually look like in practice when you are standing in that messy early stage of a project?
It's basically a strategic process of organizing chaos. Before any development begins, learning architecture forces you to examine several critical elements.
Like what?
Well, first you have to clearly define the audience. And not just, oh, it's for new hires. Like, who are they? What is their day-to-day reality? What is their stress level?
Got it.
You must define the desired performance outcome, the actual content required to get them there, the learner experience, the technology platforms, the launch plan, and crucially, the measurement strategy.
Man, it sounds a bit like trying to coordinate a kitchen prep line. Like trying to bake a cake where 3 different chefs are throwing ingredients into the bowl at the same time because nobody agreed on the recipe beforehand.
That's pretty much exactly what it's like.
Architecture is forcing everyone to agree it's a chocolate cake and agreeing on who is doing the baking before anyone is allowed to touch a single egg.
That is a great analogy because it gets to the heart of why the early stage of a project is so dangerous. It's stakeholder misalignment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The source text points out that without this architectural blueprint, stakeholders will just default to their own assumptions.
Naturally.
Let's say you skip the architecture phase. You just gather your stakeholders and say, hey, let's build the training.
Right.
Because you haven't aligned on the recipe, one stakeholder, maybe from the legal department, insists they just need a basic text-heavy module to check a compliance box.
Right. They just want to avoid a lawsuit. They don't care about anything else.
Precisely. But another stakeholder, maybe the sales director, strongly demands highly interactive, scenario-based practice because they want their team to be sharper on the phones.
Completely different goal.
Right. Then a third person, maybe the IT manager, doesn't care about the content at all. They just want robust LMS reporting to track server loads.
Oh, boy.
And the marketing director is insisting on a highly polished, incredibly expensive video production just to match the brand guidelines.
If you start building while all those conflicting expectations are floating around the room, you are building a monster. You are trying to build something that satisfies legal, sales, IT, and marketing simultaneously.
Yep.
It's going to end up being a bloated mess that helps absolutely no one.
And that is exactly the mechanism of learning architecture. It provides the structure to resolve those conflicting expectations early.
I love that.
It forces all those stakeholders to look at the business problem, look at the audience, and actually agree on the desired outcome.
Yeah.
It aligns them before the development work becomes way too expensive to fix.
Wait, hold on. I hear you, but if I go to my boss, who has a major product launching in 5 days, and tell her we need to pause for learning architecture and align the stakeholders, I mean, I am going to get laughed out of the room.
A lot of people feel that way, yeah.
This sounds like an academic luxury. In the real world, businesses move incredibly fast. Deadlines are super tight. Doesn't the strategy just create a massive bottleneck and slow down the actual work of getting the training out the door?
Actually, no. That is a very common trap, assuming that pausing to plan is a waste of time. But if you think strategy slows you down, try dealing with mid-development rework.
Oh, rework is the worst.
It really is. Done well, learning architecture does the exact opposite of creating a bottleneck. It creates the conditions for faster, cleaner development.
How? Because from a project management perspective, adding an entire diagnostic phase really feels like adding weeks to a timeline.
Think about the visceral pain points the source material lists when teams skip this step. What happens when you start building with unclear needs? First, the content constantly changes mid-development.
Oh, yeah.
You build a module, show it to a stakeholder, and they say, oh, actually, I want it to look completely different now that I see it.
Which requires tearing it down and rebuilding. That destroys timelines.
Exactly. Second, subject matter experts provide their critical feedback way too late in the process.
Oh, the 11th hour SME swoop. We have all lived through that. You've spent your entire weekend finalizing the interactive graphics, you presented on Monday, and the software expert says, actually, the interface doesn't look like that anymore. We updated it yesterday.
Right. It's devastating.
Yeah.
And because no one agreed on the priorities up front, every single stakeholder feels entitled to add their own pet topic. The course bloats from 20 minutes to 2 hours, becoming this tedious marathon that learners just resent.
Ugh, the worst.
And the absolute worst-case scenario, the team works incredibly hard. The learners complete the training, but they still fail to apply the skills on the job because the training didn't target the actual barrier to performance.
Wow.
Then leadership demands to see the return on investment, but because you never planned a measurement strategy during the architecture phase,
Yeah.
you have 0 day to give them.
So what does this all mean? It means a frustrating project launch or the stress of working nights and weekends to fix a broken module isn't usually caused by a lack of effort. I mean, the team is working incredibly hard.
They usually are, yeah.
The failure is caused by a lack of clear architecture. You sprinted in the wrong direction, and now you have to walk all the way back to the starting line.
Exactly. When the team knows exactly what they're building, why they're building it, who it is for, and how success will be evaluated, the actual production phase moves remarkably fast.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't guessing. You are executing a blueprint.
Okay, so preventing the weekend rework sounds great in theory, but let's look at how this plays out in reality. The source text has this fantastic section on onboarding, and it really feels like the ultimate testing ground for this concept.
Oh, absolutely. Almost every company struggles with onboarding.
Right. So let's say leadership team says, we need onboarding training. If we take the without architecture approach, what usually happens?
Well, the team panics and builds a massive, exhausting course.
Right. The classic fire hose approach. They dump company policies, software tools, cultural pillars, HR systems, and job expectations all into one giant 6-hour e-learning module.
It's just a data dump.
Yeah, the poor new hire sits in a dark room on their first day, just clicking next until their eyes glaze over.
But if we apply the with architecture approach, the team stops, investigates the symptom, and they usually discover that the real underlying problem isn't that new hires lack access to information. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the true root cause is inconsistent role readiness.
Meaning what? Because clearly they still need to know the HR systems and the software tools, right?
They do, but knowledge isn't the barrier to them actually performing their jobs. The barrier is that the reality on the ground is completely fractured.
Okay, how so?
Well, new hires are getting entirely different explanations of their day-to-day tasks, depending on which veteran employee happens to be shadowing them. Managers aren't using the same checklist to verify competence.
Right, it's just chaos.
Exactly. Vital, everyday knowledge isn't even in that massive course. It's buried in disorganized, shared folders that the new hire doesn't even have permissions to access yet. They finish the 6-hour course, but they completely lack confidence during their first 30 days.
So the giant course didn't solve the problem because a lack of content wasn't the disease. The disease was a lack of consistency and managerial support.
Exactly.
So how does architecture fix that? The text outlines a really elegant solution.
It fixes it by building an ecosystem, rather than just a single event. The true architectural fix might include a very short, high-level onboarding module to handle the absolute basics, maybe 30 minutes, just to welcome them.
That sounds way better.
But paired with that, you create a specific guide for the managers, so they know exactly how to coach the new hire week by week. You create a standardized 30-day readiness checklist, so every single new hire in the company is measured against the exact same standards.
I like that.
You set up clear LMS reporting to track that checklist. And you build targeted, scenario-based practice moments for the new hires to test their skills safely on the floor.
That is a wildly different solution than just building a course. You are actually changing how the managers behave. You are changing the whole environment the learner steps into.
Yes, you're designing the whole experience.
Which brings up a really interesting friction point. Getting a team of order takers, people who are used to just making slides when they are told, to suddenly act like investigative journalists and build ecosystems, that requires a completely different mindset. How does a team even pivot to that way of thinking?
It requires anchoring your work in a specific philosophy. The source material from Emerge ID points to a very clear viewpoint. Learning must be clear, accessible, useful, and measurable.
Useful and measurable.
Right. It has to move beyond just launching content into the void. The fundamental goal of any learning team is to help people understand, practice, apply, and improve.
Yeah. And as a quick aside, Emerge ID actually has a new website coming soon that is specifically designed to help organizations find these kinds of targeted solutions based on exactly where they are in their life cycle.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, whether they need help with that upfront strategy, the development, or the measurement. But to help you, the listener, start applying this mindset immediately, the text provides what it calls the 5 golden questions. And here's where it gets really interesting. These aren't just polite suggestions. These are the specific, non-negotiable questions that you must ask before moving any project into production.
And we need to explore why these questions are actually quite difficult to ask in a corporate environment.
Right. So, question 1. What prompted the training request?
This is about finding the cough.
Mm,
What is the specific symptom that made someone speak up? Was there a spike in customer complaints? Did a new piece of software launch and everyone is making errors? You have to isolate the trigger.
got it. Question 2. What should learners be able to do differently after the experience? And notice the phrasing there. It doesn't ask what they should know, it asks what they should do.
And that distinction is everything. Knowing the company's core values is abstract. You can't measure it. Doing differently means behavior. You can observe a sales rep handling an objection differently. You can observe a technician following a safety protocol differently. If you can't define the behavior change, you can't design the training.
Makes total sense. Question 3. What is currently preventing that behavior or performance? So we are looking for the actual roadblock.
Exactly. And this is where the architecture really proves its worth. Is the barrier a lack of knowledge? If so, build a course. But what if the barrier is bad tools?
Yeah.
What if the software is constantly crashing? What if expectations are unclear or they simply don't have enough time on their shift to complete the task? Training cannot fix a broken tool or a toxic culture.
Which leads perfectly into question 4. And honestly, this one feels like the hardest one to actually use in real life. What evidence do we have? That is a terrifying question to ask a vice president who just confidently told you that their team needs a communication workshop.
It really is terrifying because it feels like you are challenging their authority. But you have to ask it because otherwise you are building expensive solutions based purely on executive assumptions.
So how do you ask it without getting fired?
You have to learn how to frame it collaboratively. Like you say, I want to make sure we hit the mark here. Do we have any customer feedback scores or error logs or quality assurance reports that show us exactly where the communication is breaking down?
Oh, that's smart.
You need data, or at least direct observation, to prove the barrier is real.
And finally, question 5. What would tell us the solution worked?
Before you build, you must define the finish line. How will you measure success in a way the business actually cares about?
And completion rates don't count, right?
No, completion rates are a vanity metric. The business doesn't care if 100% of people finish the module. The business cares if error rates dropped by 10% or if sales conversion increased by 5%. You have to agree on that metric before you build so you can design the training to specifically move that needle.
Those 5 questions, what prompted it? What should they do differently? What is preventing it? What evidence do we have and what tells us it worked? They are a diagnostic powerhouse. But the source material leaves us with a crucial and somewhat sobering final warning about them.
Yeah.
If you run through those 5 questions with your stakeholders and you find that the answers are vague, conflicting, or simply missing, you are not ready to build.
And this raises a profound point about how we view our value as professionals. Recognizing that you aren't ready to build is not a failure. It is not a setback.
It's a signal.
Yes, it is a vital signal that stronger architecture is needed before you spend a single dollar on production. It is the system working exactly as intended to protect your organization's resources.
So to bring this deep dive to a close, if you want the ultimate shortcut to being an effective leader, an effective educator, or an effective project manager, it really starts with a fundamental mindset shift. You have to stop viewing a training request as an order to be filled.
Yeah.
When someone says, "We need training," that is the beginning of an investigation, not the final answer. By slowing down and applying learning architecture, you ensure that you are actually designing ecosystems that support measurable human progress, rather than just churning out content for the sake of checking a box.
And as you think about applying this blueprint to your own work, I really want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. If a deep dive into learning and architecture forces you to investigate the root cause, and that investigation reveals that the barrier to performance isn't a lack of employee knowledge at all, but simply a broken company process, a malfunctioning piece of software, or a misaligned incentive structure, then perhaps the most successful, most brilliant training solution you can ever provide is refusing to build any training at all and using your influence to fix the broken system instead.
Sometimes the best surgery is realizing you don't need surgery, you just need to stop breathing in the dust that's making you cough. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take these tools, ask the hard questions, and we'll see you next time.